In a corporate boardroom filled with executives in tailored suits, a black woman stood presenting to quarterly results that saved her department. Her voice was steady, confident, until a blonde manager in a beige blazer stood up, walked across the polished floor, and poured an entire glass of ice-cold water directly onto her head. The room went silent. 5 white executives sat frozen behind their pristine white counter. No one moved. No one spoke. What happened next wasn't justice. It was something far more sinister. A calculated erasure that would expose the darkest truth about corporate America's treatment of black excellence. Her name was Keisha Morrison, and she had spent 7 years building a career that should have been untouchable. Every morning, Keisha arrived at Westbridge Financial Group's headquarters at 7:15 a.m., 45 minutes before anyone else. She'd park her modest sedan in the employee lot, walk through the gleaming glass doors, and head straight to her cubicle on the 14th floor. While other employees shuffled in with their lattes and complaints about traffic, Keisha had already reviewed client portfolios, responded to urgent emails, and prepared briefings for senior management. She was the senior account manager for the company's fastest-growing division. Under her leadership, client retention had jumped from 67% to 94% in just 18 months. She'd secured 3 major contracts that brought in over $12 million in revenue. Her team respected her, her clients trusted her. The numbers didn't lie. But in corporate America, numbers aren't always enough. Keisha had learned early in her career to be twice as good to get half as far. She dressed impeccably, tailored blazers, professional but not flashy. She spoke with precision, never giving anyone ammunition to call her aggressive or emotional. She documented everything, knowing that her words would be scrutinized in ways her white colleagues never were. Still, she loved her job. She loved the challenge of transforming reluctant clients into loyal partners. She loved mentoring younger employees who saw in her what they hoped to become. And she believed, perhaps naively, that excellence would eventually speak for itself. The tension started subtly, the way workplace discrimination often does. Jennifer Hastings, the regional director with platinum blonde hair and a wardrobe that cost more than Keisha's annual rent, had been with the company for 3 years. She'd been promoted rapidly, not because of exceptional results, but because she had the right connections, the right background, the right look. Jennifer's division consistently underperformed, but somehow she always had an excuse that management accepted without question. Jennifer didn't like Keisha. Perhaps it was jealousy, watching a black woman succeed through actual merit while her own position rested on privilege. Perhaps it was something darker. Whatever the reason, the microaggressions began. "Wow, you're so articulate," Jennifer would say, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "I love your hair today. Is it real?" she'd ask during team meetings loud enough for others to hear. "Don't you think you're being a bit aggressive in that email?" when Keisha used the exact same tone Jennifer employed daily. Keisha had handled it all with grace. She had been trained by experience to navigate these waters, to recognize that responding would only make her the problem. So she smiled. She nodded. She focused on her work. But last quarter changed everything. The company's flagship client, Davidson Industries, had been on the verge of leaving, a $4.7 million annual account that would have devastated the company's portfolio. Jennifer had been the primary contact for 2 years, and through incompetence or neglect, she'd let the relationship deteriorate to the breaking point. Keisha had been pulled in to salvage it. She spent 3 weeks rebuilding trust, addressing concerns Jennifer had ignored, creating a comprehensive service improvement plan.
She flew to Davidson Industries headquarters on her own time, sat through marathon meetings, and ultimately convinced them to not only stay, but expand their contract by an additional $1.2 million. It was the save of the year. Keisha expected recognition, perhaps a promotion, at minimum, a thank you. Instead, Jennifer took credit during the board presentation. Sitting in that meeting, watching Jennifer smile and gesture as if she'd orchestrated the whole thing, Keisha felt something crack inside her professional armor. But she stayed quiet. She waited. She believed the truth would surface. That's when the CEO called the emergency executive meeting, the one where everything would finally be set straight. Or so Keisha thought. She had no idea she was walking into an ambush.
The email arrived at 2:47 p.m. on a Thursday. Emergency Executive Review. Conference Room A. 4 p.m. Attendance mandatory. Keisha's stomach tightened. Emergency meetings were never good news, but she reassured herself. Maybe this was about properly crediting the Davidson save. Maybe someone had finally noticed Jennifer's pattern of taking credit for others' work. She gathered her files, double-checked her documentation, and headed to Conference Room A 15 minutes early. The room was intimidating. All white walls, minimalist modern design, with a long white counter where executives sat elevated above everyone else. It felt less like a conference room and more like a courtroom. She was the first to arrive. She chose a spot near the center of the room, standing because there were no chairs for presenters, and waited. Jennifer arrived next, her beige blazer perfectly pressed, her expression unreadable. She didn't acknowledge Keisha, just took a position on the opposite side of the room. Then came the 5 executives who would decide her fate. They filed in one by one, taking their positions behind the white counter like judges on a bench. From left to right, Marcus Chen, the CFO in his perpetual navy suit. Patricia Hammond and Diane Stewart, both white women in matching maroon blazers, the HR representatives who always seemed to protect the company more than the employees. Rebecca Walsh, the VP of Operations, in a severe black blazer. And finally, Jennifer's mentor and biggest supporter, Linda Castellano, in a dark blue top that somehow made her look both authoritative and sympathetic. The CEO, Robert Davidson, no relation to the client, arrived last. He was a tall man with silver hair and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. He sat at the center of the executive panel and opened a leather portfolio. "Thank you all for attending on short notice," he began, his voice measured. "We have a serious matter to address regarding the Davidson Industries account." Keisha's heart lifted slightly. Finally, recognition. "We have some concerns raised about the handling of this account, and we need to clear the air," Robert continued. "Jennifer, would you like to start?" Keisha's breath caught. Why was Jennifer starting? Jennifer stepped forward, her expression transforming into something Keisha had never seen before. Calculated vulnerability, like an actress taking the stage. "Thank you, Robert," Jennifer began, her voice soft, almost trembling. "This has been incredibly difficult for me. I've been with this company for 3 years, and I've always tried to lead with integrity and teamwork." Keisha's pulse quickened. What was happening? "When the Davidson account started having issues, I took full responsibility. I worked day and night to develop a recovery strategy. But then," she paused, her eyes glistening with what might have been rehearsed tears, "I was undermined at every turn." The executives leaned forward, attentive. "Keisha went behind my back. She contacted the client directly, without my authorization. She presented herself as the lead on the account, which was never approved. She took my strategy, the one I'd been developing, and presented it as her own." Keisha felt the room tilt. That's not Please don't interrupt, Linda Castellano cut in sharply. Let Jennifer finish. I have documentation, Jennifer said, pulling out a folder. Emails showing her unauthorized contact with Davidson Industries, meeting notes that prove she excluded me from critical discussions, and worst of all, Jennifer's voice broke, convincingly, she's been telling people that I'm incompetent, that I don't deserve my position. She's created a hostile work environment. The words hit Keisha like physical blows. Every accusation was a twisted version of the truth. Her authorized salvage work painted as insubordination, her documented success portrayed as theft, her mere existence as a black woman excelling in her role somehow transformed into hostility. That's completely false, Keisha said firmly, her professional training kicking in. I have emails from Robert himself authorizing my involvement. I have client communications showing they requested me specifically. We've reviewed your emails, Marcus Chen interrupted, his tone cold. And frankly, Keisha, your tone in many of them is concerning, aggressive, insubordinate. Aggressive? Keisha's voice rose slightly despite her best efforts. I used standard professional language. See, Jennifer interjected, pointing at Keisha. This is exactly what I'm talking about. She can't handle feedback without becoming confrontational. Keisha looked around the room, searching for an ally. Patricia and Diane from HR avoided eye contact. Rebecca Walsh looked bored. Linda Castellano was nodding sympathetically at Jennifer. Robert Davidson, the CEO, watched with an expression Keisha couldn't read. I'd like to present my documentation, Keisha said, reaching for her folder. I have proof of everything I'm saying. That won't be necessary, Robert said dismissively. We've already conducted our investigation. Investigation? Keisha's voice cracked. No one interviewed me. No one asked for my side. The evidence speaks for itself, Linda Castellano said sharply. Keisha felt the room closing in. This wasn't a review. It was a setup. They'd already decided. Everything she'd built, every success she'd earned was being systematically dismantled by people who'd made up their minds before she'd even walked in the room. I saved that account, Keisha said, her voice steady, despite the rage and fear building inside her. I have the client's own words thanking me specifically. I have the contract expansion they signed because of my work. How can you sit there and... Jennifer moved then, with theatrical precision. She picked up the glass of water that had been sitting on a side table and walked across the room. The executives watched, curious. Keisha watched, confused. And then Jennifer poured the entire glass of ice-cold water directly on Keisha's head. The shock hit first, the cold, the wetness seeping through her hair, down her neck, soaking into her vibrant green blouse. Then came the humiliation as Keisha stood there, dripping, while Jennifer stepped back with a slight smile. Oops, Jennifer said flatly. Sorry, my hand slipped. The room was silent. No one moved. No one gasped. The 5 executives behind their white counter sat frozen, their expressions ranging from uncomfortable to carefully neutral. Keisha looked at each of them, water dripping from her hair on the pristine floor. She waited for someone, anyone, to say something, to call out what had just happened, to show even basic human decency. Marcus Chen cleared his throat and looked down at his papers. Patricia and Diane exchanged a glance but said nothing. Rebecca Walsh checked her phone. Linda Castellano smiled slightly. And Robert Davidson, the CEO, the man who could stop this with one word, simply closed his leather portfolio. I think we're done here, he said quietly. Keisha stood there, dripping and trembling, not from cold, but from the realization of what was happening. This wasn't about the Davidson account. This was about erasure. This was about reminding her of her place. This was about showing her that no amount of excellence, no amount of professionalism, no amount of documentation would protect her from the color of her skin in a room full of white executives who'd already decided she didn't belong. "You can't be serious," Keisha whispered. But they were. And the worst was yet to come.
Robert Davidson stood up from behind the white counter, adjusting his suit jacket with casual authority. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute power. "Keisha Morrison," he began, each word precise and devastating. "Effective immediately, you are terminated from Westbridge Financial Group." The words hung in the air like poison. Keisha's knees nearly buckled, but years of standing tall in rooms that wanted her small kept her upright. "On what grounds?" she demanded, her voice somehow steady despite the water still dripping from her hair down her back, despite the trembling in her hands, despite the rage and terror warring inside her chest. "Insubordination," Robert said simply, as if it were obvious. "Theft of intellectual property. Creating a hostile work environment. Unauthorized client contact. Need I go on?" "Those are lies," Keisha said, her voice rising. "Every single one is a lie, and you know it. I have documentation proving everything I did was authorized. I have emails from you personally approving my involvement with Davidson Industries. I have—" "What you have," Linda Castellano interrupted, standing to add her authority to Robert's, "is a pattern of problematic behavior that we can no longer ignore. Your aggressive communication style, your inability to work as part of a team, your consistent undermining of established leadership." "Established leadership?" Keisha's laugh was bitter, broken. "You mean Jennifer? The woman who nearly lost our biggest client through incompetence? The woman who just assaulted me in front of all of you?" She gestured to Jennifer, who stood to the side, looking perfectly composed, perfectly innocent, not a hair out of place, while Keisha stood there drenched and humiliated. "That was an accident," Jennifer said smoothly. "I already apologized." "An accident?" Keisha's voice cracked. "You looked me in the eyes and poured water on my head. Everyone in this room saw it." She spun to face the 5 executives, searching desperately for one face that showed recognition, acknowledgement, basic humanity. "You saw it," she said to Marcus Chen, who studied his hands. "You all saw it. She assaulted me, and you're firing me?" "We're not firing you because of that unfortunate incident. We're terminating your employment due to a pattern of documented behavioral issues that have been brought to our attention." "Documented?" Keisha's mind raced. "I've never received a single written warning. I've never been placed on probation. My performance reviews have been exemplary. This is retaliation, and it's illegal." "I'd be very careful about throwing around accusations," Patricia Hammond spoke up from her position behind the counter, her HR training evident in every calculated word. "We have extensive documentation of the issues we've discussed. If you choose to pursue legal action, you should know that we're prepared to defend this decision vigorously." The threat was clear. Fight us, and we'll destroy you. Keisha looked around the room again, seeing it clearly for the first time. This wasn't incompetence. This wasn't a mistake. This was systematic, coordinated erasure. They'd created a paper trail of false accusations. They'd held a mock review where she had no chance to defend herself. They'd allowed her to be humiliated and assaulted without consequence. And now they were firing her to protect Jennifer, to protect the image of white mediocrity over black excellence. "This is about race," Keisha said, her voice quiet but clear as crystal. "You're firing me because I'm a black woman who succeeded where Jennifer failed, and you can't allow that narrative to exist in your company." The silence that followed was deafening.
"That's a serious accusation," Robert said, his voice turning cold, "and one I reject completely. This organization values diversity." "Diversity?" Keisha's laugh was raw, broken. "You value the appearance of diversity. You value being able to point to employees like me in your marketing materials. But when I actually excel, when I actually save your company millions of dollars, when I actually threaten the mediocrity you've built your hierarchy on, then I become the problem." She pointed at Jennifer. "She can fail upward forever because she looks like success to you. But I have to be perfect, and even perfection isn't enough. I have to be silent when she takes credit for my work. I have to accept being called aggressive when I use the same tone she uses. I have to stand here, dripping wet from her assault, and listen to you call it an accident." Tears burned in Keisha's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She wouldn't give them that satisfaction. "I saved the Davidson account. I did everything right. I followed every rule. I exceeded every expectation, and it still wasn't enough. Because in this room, in this company, in this world, I was never going to be enough. Not because I'm not capable, but because I'm black." Robert Davidson picked up his leather portfolio, signaling the meeting's end. "Security will escort you out. You have 15 minutes to collect your personal belongings." And just like that, 7 years of excellence was erased.
The walk from conference room A to her 14th floor cubicle was the longest of Keisha Morrison's life. Security, a young black man named Marcus, whose eyes showed he understood exactly what was happening, walked 3 paces behind her. Colleagues who'd praised her work yesterday now stared at their computer screens, unable or unwilling to meet her eyes. The whispers had already started, the corporate gossip machine turning her termination into entertainment, into cautionary tale, into proof that maybe she'd never been that good after all. Keisha gathered her things mechanically. Photos of her family, the mug her niece had given her that said Auntie's #1 fan, the succulent plant that had somehow survived despite fluorescent lighting and her irregular watering schedule. 7 years of her life fit into one cardboard box that Marcus helped her carry to her car. She didn't cry. Not in the building, not in the parking lot, not during the 40-minute drive home through rush-hour traffic where every red light felt like another minute to process what had happened. She cried in her apartment, alone, the cardboard box sitting on her kitchen table like a tombstone for her career. But here's what Westbridge Financial Group didn't count on: documentation. Keisha had spent 7 years being twice as good, which meant she'd also been twice as careful. Every email was saved, every authorization was documented, every success was time-stamped and verified. She had the original communications from Davidson Industries specifically requesting her involvement. She had Robert Davidson's email explicitly authorizing her to lead the recovery effort. She had Jennifer's own messages admitting she'd lost control of the account. She also had the conference room meeting recorded on her phone. Keisha hadn't planned it. Her phone had been in her blazer pocket, and when Jennifer started speaking, Keisha had instinctively pressed record, a habit born from years of knowing her word would never be enough against theirs. That recording captured everything: Jennifer's lies, the executive's bias, the water assault, the illegal termination. 3 weeks later, Keisha's lawyer filed a lawsuit for wrongful termination, racial discrimination, and hostile work environment. The recording went public. The story hit national news. Suddenly, Westbridge Financial Group's carefully cultivated image of diversity and inclusion shattered under the weight of undeniable proof. Jennifer Hastings was quietly resigned. The 5 executives who'd sat silent behind that white counter were placed on leave pending investigation. And Robert Davidson, the CEO who'd orchestrated Keisha's erasure, was forced to step down amid calls from shareholders who saw the company's stock plummet as clients withdrew their business. But the vindication felt hollow.
Because Keisha wasn't the first, and she wouldn't be the last. Across America, in corporate offices and retail stores, in hospitals and universities, in every industry and every city, Black professionals face the same impossible standard. Be excellent enough to earn your place, but never so excellent that you threaten the hierarchy. Work twice as hard, but never expect equal recognition. Document everything, but know your documentation will be questioned while their accusations are accepted as fact. The Davidson Industries CEO, the real Davidson, not Robert, called Keisha personally to apologize and offer her a position at his company. She declined, not because she didn't appreciate the gesture, but because she realized something fundamental had broken inside her. The joy she'd once found in her work had been contaminated by the knowledge that no matter how excellent, no matter how much preparation, no matter how much professionalism could protect her from the weapon of her own skin color in spaces that wanted her small. Keisha eventually settled the lawsuit for an undisclosed sum. She used part of the money to start her own consulting firm, working exclusively with minority professionals navigating corporate America. She teaches them what she learned: document everything, trust your instincts, and understand that the game is rigged, but you can still win, just not in the ways they expect. Westbridge Financial Group still exists. They released a statement about renewed commitment to diversity and inclusion. They hired a diversity consultant. They updated their employee handbook. They did everything corporations do to manage crisis without actually changing the fundamental structure that enabled the crisis in the first place. Because here's the uncomfortable truth that Keisha's story exposes. Individual racism is just the symptom. The disease is systemic, built into hiring practices that favor cultural fit over competence, promotion tracks that reward proximity to power over actual results, and HR departments that exist to protect companies, not employees. When Jennifer poured water on Keisha's head, she wasn't acting alone. She was enacting the violence of a system that taught her she could. And when those 5 executives sat silent, they weren't passive witnesses. They were active participants in an erasure that happens every day to Black professionals who dared to be excellent in spaces that never wanted them there in the first place.